Hello humanoids, Halfling Hannah here from Halfling Hobbies, and I am here with my favorite DM binder, which I've shown you before, because I am getting ready to prep for one of my sessions, and I thought, hey, why not show you how I prep for a session? If you are a new DM who is stressing out about preparing for your first session or just any session in general, or if you're a veteran DM looking to cut down your prep time and do it more efficiently, this video is for you. Here we go. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe to Halfling Hobbies so that we can get to 1,000 subscribers together. I know we can do it. Let's go. But today we're going to talk about something that DMs can get really stressed about and something that we sometimes don't do at all, which is prepping for our session. Prep is very important in order to have a successful session that you feel confident about. Yes, you can fly by the seat of your pants, but you're going to be stressed the whole time, and your players are going to know that something's just a little bit off. However, if you spend just an hour prepping for your session, I guarantee it will be so much smoother and you will have so much more fun. So here is how I prep for my session. First of all, if you have done my 5-step plot planning process, then this will be so easy because most everything has already been thought out when you went to write your campaign at the beginning. If you don't know what that is, check out the video on that. It is a lifesaver. But if you have done that, then you already know your plot inside and out. So what I do first thing when I plan for a session is I review the plot. I review where my players are at in that plot, what needs to be going on, and what hooks they're at so far. So you look at your plot, you look at your villain. What is your villain doing at this time, whether your players know it or not? Your villain needs to be an active and alive part of your world, constantly doing something, even if your players don't know what it is or engage with it. This will allow your plot to continue and you to give out plot hooks as necessary, which is the next part of planning your plot. Look at the plot hook ideas that you have written down and decide which one you want to use for this session, or have a small list of potential plot hook ideas that you can use. If your players go to a city, if they're in a forest, if they're in a remote dungeon, how are you going to remind them of your plot this session? This is very important to keep your players engaged with what is happening in your world, to keep your story moving forward so that your players don't feel stuck and your game doesn't get stale. So review your plot, review your villain, and make sure that you have some plot hooks ready to go. Step number 2 in my pre-planning session is that I plan out NPCs. I like to have lots of random NPCs that I can plug into any situation. Now, this can be really time consuming if you're doing all of these yourself. Here's what my NPC sheets look like. So I have a tab in my binder that is specifically dedicated to NPCs, and each one of them is a page that looks something like this. So for each NPC, I make sure to have a cool little picture that I can look at in order to describe or simply show my players if I'm feeling a little lazy one night. I also have a description that I can read, quirks and flaws about their personality so that I can roleplay them, their backstory that includes an optional side quest that the players can go on, and items that they might be carrying, as well as some notes that I can take to remind myself where the players encountered this NPC and any changes that I might make to them to make them fit the story better. This is very time consuming. I made a ton of these, as you can see here. I made a whole bunch of these. And I decided, you know what? Some other DMs might find this helpful too. So you can get 25 pre-made NPCs complete and ready to use for your campaign for just $9 over on Halfling Hobbies. I have the description to that down below. But I make sure that I have plenty of NPCs that I can use. And I've said this in a video before, but I only roleplay NPCs that are actually important, that have a side quest or important to the plot in some way. All my other NPCs, I might give a name or something like that if the players ask, but I don't don't actually roleplay them. So I make sure that I have a nice NPC panic list on hand that I can quickly pick a name and then cross it out. It's unlikely that my players will ever encounter that NPC again, so I don't even worry about taking notes because I don't even roleplay that situation if they aren't important. If they are important, they have their own page that I can go back to. And as you see, I actually have some tabs here on my NPC page. Those are the NPCs that my players have interacted with and will likely meet again. So my NPCs and the locations, I take time to make sure that I have those on hand, so I'm not panicking and scrambling when my players interact with an important NPC. I have everything that I need. And having those side quests is so vitally important, because if my players want something new and different to do, then they have that option through the NPCs. Along with this, if you know your players are going to a certain location, like in this campaign that I'm getting ready to plan for, I know that they are going to a mansion in order to pull off a heist. Therefore, I'm going to need to either make a map or buy a map. I'm going to buy a map. Just so you know. Mike's map is an excellent choice for this. It's like $2 a map. It's ridiculously cheap and awesome. Also, some of my friends over on Instagram, like Cork DM and Retromancer Maps, they make some incredible maps as well. They have a Patreon, so worth like $1 a month to have access to their incredible maps. So make sure that you have maps for locations that you know your PCs are going to be traveling to. I also like to have a few in my binder, just kept in my back pocket if they happen to discover something super weird or off the wall. Number 3, the third step of my prepping process. For me, NPCs and whatnot, super easy. I just need to make sure that I have maps and I'm good to go there. So number 3 can sometimes take some time. This is planning for encounters. So if your players are going to have an encounter the next session, you need to go ahead and plan that out. And I think I'm going to make that its own video. There are lots of considerations to that. But you need to have it planned out ahead of time, even random encounters. So I like to have random encounter sheets. There are also online resources that you can have on hand. So I like to have those on hand, so even if a random encounter happens, I have the information for it on hand. If it is a planned encounter, I know the exact monsters that I know that my players are going to face. There's no way around it. So I have time to go and either find or make those miniatures or tokens that I need in order to make that experience even more interesting for my players. It also gives me time to read over the monster abilities a couple of times. This is a #1 mistake that I see DMs make, is they don't realize that monsters have abilities. They have things that they can do because they didn't take the time to actually read over the monster before the party encountered them. And then in the heat of combat, you just don't have time to do that and still keep the pace of combat moving. So make sure that you read over the monsters that you're planning on using. You don't want them to have an ability that is going to destroy your party and you didn't even realize until that moment that it had that ability. And then finally, the last thing that I do when I'm prepping for a session is I look at my PC cheat sheets. I've made a cheat sheet for each one of my player characters, which I'll show you now. I've made a cheat sheet for each one of my player characters. That includes the information that's important for me to remember during combat, such as their AC, spell save DC, things like that. But also this includes their goals that they are trying to reach. I like to go back through each one of my PCs, look at their goals and look at their progress towards their goals, and see if there's any way that I can fit in something from their backstory or their goals into the session that we're about to have. This makes it so much more personalized, and if I have a player who's been a little disengaged lately, I'm going to specifically target them and see if there's any way that I can draw them into this session by using their goals or their backstory. Now this is the last one, because if I run out of time, then this is the first one to get cut. But this can be super important. And I think DMs don't pay enough attention to what their players want to do in their world, to the goals that they have. They're so focused on telling their own story that they forget about the stories that the players want to tell. And I think it's really important to take the time before each session to remember what it is the players want to tell and to give them the opportunity to do so. Now, all of this seems like a lot when I'm just telling it to you here, but when you get in the process and the habit, some of these things are only going to take a few minutes. Some of them may take a little bit longer, but overall, it takes me about an hour to prep for a session, as long as it's just a normal session and not something that's really, really big. If we're to an end boss or a really important battle or something like that, I may take the week to create an entire battle map for my players to make that session super special. But for the most part, I just use a normal battle map, some static clings, and some miniatures. That's all I use on my table. Oh, and of course, some good drinks and food. Make sure you check that out over there if you want to. If you're looking to make your prep time way simpler and way quicker, make sure that you grab my NPCs for RPGs. I hope this process helps you to prep for your amazing session more efficiently and in less time, so you can get back to doing what you do best, and that's writing incredible stories. Until next time, my friends, may your game have advantage. Halfling Hannah here, signing out.